I end up going in for an interview, and interview goes really well. And I had a couple of interesting points from the interview. One of the things I asked was, how do you guys see this going? Is this something that you want me to do and then turn into an instructor or whatever? And they responded and said, we'll be surprised if you make it 8 months. If you're here after a few years, we're going to push you out the door. We very much know that this is a stepping stone job. Come back and instruct after you've had a career kind of thing.
Hello, welcome to the ProPilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the tips, tricks, and hacks to become a pilot faster and cheaper. I'm Mike Martin.
And I'm Sean Richey. We've got an awesome episode for you today. This another interview episode here with Josh Olitzky. And I probably just said that wrong, even though I just asked you how to pronounce it. But Josh is a member of our coaching program and went through the whole program and used one of our ultimate hacks to really shortcut through his career at lightning speed. And he's just like the textbook person for what we are preaching all the time. And we got him to come on the show here to talk a little bit about his journey.
And we'll give you just for retention purposes, Josh started as a second career, and he's now flying a Lear 60, and he did it really, really quickly. So I think a lot of people can really learn from his story, especially those that are have a good job now and are thinking of maybe transitioning to aviation. Josh did it in a very efficient way possible. So he's gonna walk you through how he got involved in flying, and then he's going to see the tips that he used to get him into a jet very, very, very quickly. And I think it'll be very beneficial for everybody to watch this. Probably one of our better.
This episode would be especially beneficial to anyone who's about to start working on that CFI certificate, maybe someone who just started their CFI journey and they're one or two students in saying, oh, man, I don't know if this is for me. This episode may give you some key tactics to pivot and get those hours in a much more beneficial way. Even
100%. Yeah.
Let's get into it here.
Yeah, Josh. So to tell everyone, just kind of start out talking about your love for flying and kind of how your first career started and how that all tied into flying and everything.
Yeah. So I always wanted, like all of us, like our little boy's dream, we always want to go flying, right? And I took a flight in a 172 back in Lantana when I was at Lantana Airport down in South Florida when I was a kid. And from that point on, I wanted to get my certificates. My parents weren't so on board with it at that time. And so I ended up going away to, doing high school and going away to college. And I ended up making a friend up in Pensacola, where I was an undergrad, who was working on his commercial certificate. So we were flying all over the place, and I was loving it. I wasn't working on my certificate. I didn't really have the means at the time, but it was great.
If only you had a private pilot certificate back then, you could have been a safety pilot that whole time.
Yeah, no kidding. That whole time. Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know any better at the time, but I didn't have the means then anyways. So I was just having a good time. It was just fun to go flying. But when I finished up undergrad, as I was starting to finish up, I was thinking, man, maybe I could go flying. And it turns out my stepbrother is 18 months older than I am, and he had the same idea. And so he finished college a year before I did and went and got all of his ratings down in Florida, all the way through MEI and whatnot. And I graduated college, and he finished up his ratings, and it was 2008, and he could not get a job. So I'm kind of watching that, and we were talking a little about this before, but he was a criminal justice major, so he thought, maybe I'll be an air marshal. So that was a big thing at the time,
right?
And he couldn't even get that. Aviation was just in a lull, and so I'm looking at that, going, not now, So I ended up going away to grad school out in Arizona and doing that for almost 5 years. And I ended up in the Boston area, and I was doing my career thing. I'm an engineer, by
Okay, what
day.
kind of
So
engineer?
yeah. So my specialization is optical engineering. I know
I didn't
enough
even
of
know
the other
that was a
disciplines to get
thing.
myself in
Optical
trouble.
engineering.
Yeah. We make telescopes and lasers and stuff
Oh,
like that.
okay. All
Imaging.
right. Gotcha.
Yeah. Most people go, "Is that the eye?" I'm like, I don't know much about the
Well, that's your knee-jerk thought. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
eye. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm doing that up in New England, and I don't know about. I guess it would have been about 2018, 2019. I had a friend that had a plane, a DA-40. We started going flying together. I said, "Oh, I missed this. This was fun. This is fun." And so he was, letting me fly and whatever. He says, "Yeah, you got a knack for this. You should get your cert." So I started looking into it. I said, "Yeah, I've always wanted to fly. That'd be great." And it was really just kind of a hobby. I thought of a hobby at the time. And I start Sporty's ground school like every, aspiring, don't know what's going on person does. And then COVID hits, and no one will get
Mm.
in a plane with me to do any lessons. So, it goes on pause again. And I think a 1.5-year-old roughly at the time, and another one on the way. And I was busy anyways, so I don't know. Who knows what would have happened? But we end up moving back to Arizona to be near family. And my wife says, "Why don't you go get your pilot cert now? It'd be a good time. Weather's good here. We could have fun with it." Yeah, okay. So I find a local school, and they set me up with an instructor, and I go to my first lesson, and I have a little conversation with my instructor, and I come home, and my wife says, "How was it?" And I look at her, and I say, "I think I'm going to change careers."
There you go.
And
And the blood flowed out of her face.
yeah,
And away
she's
we
great.
go.
She's great. She says, "Okay, let's talk more about that." And she knew I was kind of, I loved my job back in New England as an engineer who I was working for at the time, and I took the job out in Tucson, and I really wasn't loving the company I was working for, and I was getting kind of burnt out on it. And without going into a whole lot of not unneeded details on that, but
Right.
anyways, I was getting burnt out on it. And so she kind of looked at it and said, "Okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out." And so I was making enough money, and I had enough flexibility in the schedule to go flying at 4 in the morning. And my instructor was great. He would meet me at the airport as early as I wanted to. So
Awesome.
we had a lot of 4 a.m. mornings. Yeah. We're good friends to this day.
Great.
That tells you the dedication, the passion, the
Oh
pure,
yeah.
unbridled passion you were feeling for this thing. You're meeting at 4
Oh
a.m.
yeah.
to go
And
do
going to
these
work
lessons.
after that.
Yeah,
Yeah, going to work after that and
that's
then doing
what
the
this
family stuff.
industry does to people. It
That's
makes you
You catch the
crazy.
bug. Yeah, you catch the bug, and that's it. So, yeah, so I chipped away at that. I figure I was flying 3 or 4 times a week. I didn't have the bandwidth to do the go full send and fly full days accelerated. But I was flying 3 or 4 days a week doing that, and it took me about 3 months to get my private. And so I get my private, and what's next? Your instrument, right? And we're kind of looking at this as I'm trying to do this, and I'm no spring chicken. I know I'm not getting younger, and I need to go. And I had talked to a few. I hadn't met you guys yet, but I had talked to a few people that I knew in the industry, and they're like, "Hey, man, go fast." That's what everyone says. Go
Right.
fast as you can.
Right.
So that's always in the back of my head. And I'm having a real hard time renting planes to build time. And the schools are busy, right? The priority is their instructors and their students. And so my next come home to my wife and say something is, "I think we need to buy an airplane."
Oh, jeez.
So she
And
says,
you had just sold a
"Sure."
boat, though, by the way, right?
I had sold a boat. Yeah, I had sold a boat. And of course I came to her with it, and I had already kind of looked into it and sort of knew what it was going to cost and how we were going to pay for it and all that. And she kind of
Oh, yeah. You got to have
looks
your
at me
shit
and
together when you're going to go to your wife
yeah,
or something like that, man.
rolls her eyes
Right,
and says,
right.
"Okay, let's talk about it." And, she's been really supportive through the whole thing. And she was
Good.
actually, yeah. So of course, the first time she goes up in a small plane, I take her up in this Cherokee that I did my Cherokee 140 that I did my check ride in. And so I take her out for a little spin, and it was pretty bumpy that day. And I was like, oh no, hopefully this didn't ruin the entire experience. But
Right.
so anyways, we end up so I had about I don't know, a month or two of looking for an airplane, trying to get an airplane where I wasn't flying a whole lot, which delayed things a bit. But the I ended up, we'll shortcut it. I ended up with a Bonanza with some help buying it, which ended up being an awesome airplane.
Great.
And yeah, great IFR plane, fast enough to be a cross-country traveler. So when we went on family vacations or whatever, we'd fly it across the country to Florida from Arizona and back. And
Wow.
building that IFR time, building actually saving money. We're saving money um, by not buying 4 commercial tickets. At least that was my
Yeah.
reasoning with it. Yeah, and so yeah, so I did the rest of my ratings except for my multi in that airplane. And the great thing was, I had the flexibility to use it whenever I wanted. I could just go get in and then fly. I could book an instructor, an independent instructor, whenever I wanted. I ended up, everyone. Well, a lot. I know it comes up in the mentoring group a lot. It's really hard to get time with DPEs,
Yes.
and I was
Really
able
hard
to.
time. They get you cut out. To get
Designated
what?
Really hard
pilot
time.
examiners. Yeah.
DPE
Oh,
check rides.
DPEs. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So for my CFI and CFII check rides, I was able to. I flew to El Paso for one of them, and it was no problem. It's my airplane. I just fly it to El Paso and do
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
And
And the whole time you're building time anyway.
the whole time building time, anyways. And yeah, so it was awesome, and I loved that plane. We
And
we
you,
sold it, but
yeah, you did. I mean, for those people watching that are thinking about doing this, I mean, like the things that you've done are things people dream about, but you actually bought the plane, did your training in it, built your time, accomplished your mission, and sold the plane, and you made a little bit of money, didn't you,
yeah,
on
I
doing
sold.
it?
Yeah, somehow I sold it for more than I paid for it. I
Well,
wouldn't. I wouldn't
it said
plan on that,
Bonanza
but
on the side of it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I sold it for more than I paid for it, and
And what
but I
model?
did get a good deal on it. It was an S35 V-tail.
That's the
What year?
V-tail. The only real, single engine light V-tails that are out there are those Bonanzas, and they
Yeah.
got a unique look to them. They're a
They're
good looking
Oh
awesome.
man, they're
airplane.
awesome.
But
Yeah.
Mike, go ahead. I think you had something. I
Yeah.
got to.
What was the year of that Bonanza?
It was a 1964, but it had an engine upgrade in it. It was an IO 550, the three
Man,
blade prop, so it was a smoker.
Yeah.
man.
So we've done an episode on this buying your own plane to do training.
Hmm.
And, by the end of it, going through all the numbers, at least financially, and, especially in the world of being a major distraction from acquisition to maintaining and everything else,
Yeah,
we kind of distinguished it as a loser. But
yeah.
it sounds like you just, highlighted some pretty significant positives. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't sound like you were financially strapped for it to make a difference, but it was not by any means cheaper, correct?
Well, if you add it up, my instrument through CFII and 400 hours. By the time I was done, if you include fuel, instructor time, and maintenance, only cost me 30K.
It was cheaper then. He
So it
pulled
was
it off.
cheaper,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying everyone can pull that off. And it was
Right.
a unique airplane. I got a
But you're
unique deal
throwing
on
in
it.
the whatever you sold it for more than you
That's right.
purchased it for.
Yeah,
That's
but I
right.
Yeah.
mean, it's possible. I mean, his timing was really good, but yeah, I mean, I think the gist of the video that we did was, in general, it may be too risky of a
Right.
proposition, but look,
Especially for primary training. For private, I mean, you're going in this thing
Yeah,
blind. I would not
I
even.
wouldn't do it for primary training. I don't think.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's worth. And to be honest, even the step up from, Cherokee 140 to the Bonanza, I had to do transition training in it, and my insurance required a certain amount of time, which is all time building. It's fine. But I didn't really feel comfortable in that airplane for 40 or 50 hours.
Yeah.
yeah. I believe that.
So, for someone that's trying to uh, do, the totally accelerated model, yeah, you're probably right. It's probably a loser time wise, duration. but for me, it
It
had,
worked out.
I had to support a family. I couldn't, you know, dive into 7 days a week training. I had to keep the money coming in for
Right.
where I was at.
Totally.
And the
Gotcha.
So,
flexibility of having my own airplane was super helpful for
oh yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
and all the intangibles, being able to use it whenever you wanted, take it on trips, all that sounds great.
Yeah.
So overall, looking back, you would do it again, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
100%. I would
yeah,
do it
and
again.
that's
Yeah.
important for the
Yeah.
viewers to know that you did that.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
And for me, the whole time as I was chipping away, getting my commercial and everything, I was worried about how am I going to take this pay cut, right? How am I going to make this transition? And I didn't have it mapped out. Um, even after I got the tip from you guys, which I'm sure we'll get into,
Yeah,
how I shortcutted into the jet. Even
Mhm.
then, I was thinking, how am I going to make this transition financially?
right,
Right.
right.
Well,
Cool. Well, let's get into it. So you get all your ratings. Did you got your CFI then, or
I have my CFI and CFII. Yep.
were you
gotcha.
instructing, or?
I did. Yeah, I was instructed. Yeah. So by the time I got this job that I'm doing now, I was real ready for it. I was engineering part time. I was flight instructing at a school. I was flight instructing independent on the side, and I was working at flight safety. So I was burning the candle at both ends. I was ready to get into a job where I only had one job.
Right, right. So you joined our coaching program, and we got to know you in our weekly coaching calls,
Yep.
and we discovered that you lived in Tucson,
Yep.
and there's a big training center there, and Sean for jets. This is professional aviation. This nothing to do with GA or anything like that. And I had done a type rating there in the past on the Lear 45, I think is what I did out there. Yeah, and then we recommended, hey, if you can go there and meet somebody and get in the right seat. So what these training centers have is sometimes a single pilot will go there for training from a jet operator somewhere in the world. And they don't have anybody to pair him up, and you have to fly the airplane with two pilots. So you got an instructor in the back of the sim, you got the guy training, and then typically his co-pilot is with them, and they swap seats. But if for scheduling reasons or whatever, for instance, I'm on only a two-man operation for my airplane, maybe they want one pilot back to fly trips while the other one is in training. Even three pilot operations will do that because they could spare one guy, and then they don't ground the airplane. One guy can be out in training. So you got a guy training solo. So they don't want to put an instructor in with him because they have to have an instructor run the sim. So what
Right.
they'll pay on a contract basis a pilot to just ride in the sim and fly the sim. And you were able to kind of finagle your way into that job. So yeah, tell everybody how you did that and what the steps were.
Yeah, so I joined the mentoring group, and I'm going. I remember talking to you guys, and you guys found out I lived in Tucson, and you said, "Hey, you got to check out this flight safety thing." And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah." I saw they had a simulator, second in command job posting a while back, but I don't know. I don't really want to fly I want to fly a real airplane and get time. And you guys were like, "No, no, no,
You're
no,
right. This
no, no.
isn't
This
just
is go there. Yes, go do that." So anyways, we talked about it, and you kind of explained that, and the networking opportunity couldn't be overstated either. And so I had gotten a couple of other interviews at the time with some other operators, and kind of in life in general. I had learned you got to go talk to someone, get some FaceTime, show up. They're cold. Even when I finished grad school, when I was looking for a job, I would apply to jobs where the rec was written for me. I did all this in grad school, right? And I didn't get a call back. It's just impossible to get through that HR firewall most of the time. So, anyways, I walk in the door with my resume, and I say, "Hey, I saw you guys have this." And the woman at the front desk goes, "You want an SIC job, don't you?" So, she's been there a while. So I said, "Yeah." She said, "Let me call someone and see if they come talk to you." I said, "Okay." So I talked to a guy who was in charge of one of the programs there, and he said, "Oh, you really need to talk to the director of the center, but nice to talk to you, whatever. Here's his card." So I sent the director an email, and I said, "Hey, I stopped by. Happy to come back by again, but I talked to so and so, and I'm super interested. This is my background. Here's my resume." And he responds and he says, and I said, so and so told me it's a real hard transition into the jets from piston planes, but I think I can handle it. Here's why, whatever. So he responds and says, I think you'll be fine with the transition, especially with a degree from the school you're in. By the way, I have a degree from the same school. And I was like, wow, yeah,
That's called
exactly. Yeah.
rapport.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got to show up to blow up, baby.
Yeah. So, a lot of my story is, I guess, a bit serendipitous.
Yep.
But
So how many
I'm not
hours? I'm sorry to
at this
interrupt.
point.
Yeah, how many
Yeah.
hours did
So,
you have walking in that door there?
so I had 350 hours. And I didn't have my CFI or my double I yet, and I had my multi-engine check ride in a few weeks.
Gotcha.
So you
Up
have to
until
have a
this point,
commercial
you had
multi.
planned on flight instructing to get
I was going to
get
flight instruct.
hours. That was the whole plan. Okay.
Yep. And so, but you need a commercial multi-engine instrument to work there at Flight Safety.
Yep.
And so I end up going in for an interview, and interview goes really well. And I had a couple of interesting points from the interview. One of the things I asked was, how do you guys see this going? Is this something that you want me to do and then turn into an instructor, whatever? And they responded and said, we'll be surprised if you make it 8 months. If you're here after a few years, we're going to push you out the door. We very much know that this is a stepping stone job. Come back and instruct after you've had a career, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so it was great that, we were all on the same page from the very start, that this was, I was going to pay my dues and work there for 8 months or so. And then the other carrot on the end of the stick is, if you make it 12 months, they'll give you a full type.
Nice.
Yeah. So, they're trying to incentivize it, and they're certainly looking for people that are going to stick around for that 8-ish months. If you do your initial and recurrent and you leave after a month, it's not a great thing to do. And you got to remember, you're probably going to see these people again if you're flying
Yeah.
the jet.
Aviation's a small world. Yeah. Aviation,
So,
as we'll get into here in a little bit, how small of a world it is. We can mention before we get
Right,
off the
because you're
call.
probably going to get hired into the plane that they train on, and then that company
Exactly.
obviously
And you're gonna
trains
come
there because
back.
that's how you
Yeah.
met the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
see what right.
keeping that in mind. And then, of course, they can do, and they did do favors for me with scheduling and whatnot when I got this job. And I tried to buy credits, right? Every time one of the things they need is flexibility. And so anytime that I was able to, and they called and said, hey, we had a cancellation, we need you to come in tomorrow. Yes, I'll be there, as much as I could.
Were you still working at your engineering job too?
So I finished this interview. They offered me a job on the spot, pending. Maybe I had already finished my multi-ride, or I can't remember the order of it. Maybe I'd already finished, or it was a job offer pending that I, got my multi done in the next couple of weeks, whatever it was. And so I get this offer from Flight Safety. So I go to my engineering job, and my boss there was awesome. One of the best boss I've ever had. Manager. He's a manager. So I go to him and I say, hey, I got this opportunity to go fly. Sorry, I have a weird angle here because I'm in my hotel room in Punta Cana.
Yeah, let's bring that up so the viewers know. This is why he's all relaxing there. You're actually working and you're in Punta Cana, so that's a good. Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty hard to call what we did today working, but
yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So, anyways, I go to my engineering job, and I had a pretty successful career, and I had a great manager, and I said, hey, this opportunity kind of fell in my lap, and I'd really like to take it and go to part-time. And he basically says, do whatever you want. You're either going to go off and do this and chase your dreams, or you're not going to like it and you're going to come back and you're never going to leave because we kept you happy, kind of thing, which is
it's a great philosophy.
Yeah, man, it was great. So I was doing that. And I was traveling a lot for work at the time. And I was actually able to fly my airplane for some of that travel.
Oh, that's cool.
So they wouldn't be happy if they knew that. But anyways, then I was engineering part-time. I was doing the flight safety thing, and I was chipping away at my CFI and CFII. because, at 350 hours of loggable time, it was pretty unlikely I was going to get into a jet. So I knew I needed to still build some time. So I was doing that, and then I started flight instructing, and I was recording all of my sim time in a separate logbook. So one of the things that you guys also had told me, and I sort of asked around anytime I talked to someone, a lot of these operators that aren't 121, while the sim time while you're working at flight safety isn't loggable towards FAA ratings like your ATP, your training time is, but when you're with a client, it's not. The insurance companies love it, and the operators love it.
Right.
And I actually, got to test out, does the sim translate? We can talk about that in a minute. But anyway, so I'm logging all that time, and by the time I was about 10 months in, I had 200 hours in the sim.
And you, what airframe were you on?
I was on the Lear 60.
And by that time, within 10 months, this is an important thing, you probably met 50 Lear 60 pilots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of them, even when I was low time, were recommending me to their chief pilots at their operations, like saying, hey, this guy's good, let's pick him up. But, my time was really low, and I knew that. So
but they met. I just want to, before we gloss over that, it's not like he met them in the break room and shook their hand and had a 5-minute conversation with them over coffee. He is working with them for hours, sitting next to them, being their right-hand man in the simulator while engines are on fire, hydraulic pumps are blowing out fluid. He's running checklists. He's saving their ass for check rides. He is showing his worth in that cockpit for hours all day long. So he's getting these guys, he's buddies with them. They're offering him jobs. This is the greatest networking hack ever.
Totally.
The networking can't be overstated. Yeah, every sim ride's an interview, essentially.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I kind of poked around and asked, and one of the instructors is like, hey, I can't remember, it was 8 for 8 or 9 for 9 of the last SICs that came through here all have jobs at operations. Some of them are chief pilots now, and I even got to fly with some of them. So it is absolutely, the networking can't be overstated for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And right after you're
plus
hired,
the training,
you go through the full initial type school, and then they SIC type rate you, correct?
So you go through the full initial type school, the Part 91, 6155 Bravo type school, and then they send you through a recurrent with a check ride, a 293 or 299, whatever it is. And so that you're as qualified as, legally speaking, as anyone to fly the airplane. Insurance looks at it the same. And in fact, so you don't get an SIC type, which doesn't really matter. You get you can fly domestically, so you can go contract fly.
You get the endorsement. You get an SIC endorsement.
You have the training record, essentially.
Okay, gotcha. So somebody could sign you off if they needed you to go get in the jet and be 100% legal because
totally
you've got
legal.
Yeah.
The only thing you need the SIC type for is international.
Right.
And in order to get that, there's a caveat. I think it's 6155 Echo that says if you don't have a type rating and all you did was sim training for the 6155, you have to get a bounce, a takeoff and a landing in the actual airplane, and then you just paperwork the SIC type. And I thought I needed that to do a recurrent when I got a job, but it turns out that you don't. You can go straight into a recurrent if you get a job, which is another benefit of this whole flight safety thing. Whoever hires you knows you can pass the check ride in the course, which doesn't always happen. Guys get washed out, especially if you're coming from 1,500 hours and a 172. It's a big step up.
Absolutely.
So they know you can pass. Plus, it's a lot less expensive to do a recurrent. And if it's a 135 operator, they have to do a recurrent for anyone. So
whoever they hire,
it levels the playing field, or even gives you an advantage.
Just to further.
So I went straight in. Yeah, go ahead.
To elaborate on that, yeah, you could be at a 135 operator or a 91 operator, just walked out of a recurrent, then you get hired by another 135 operator, and you got to go back to recurrent, even though you were just
That's
there
right.
because you
Has
didn't
to be
train under their
Yep,
specs. Yeah,
different op
gotcha.
specs. Yep.
Right.
So that's built into whoever they hire.
Yeah.
That cost, I guess. Yeah.
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 Right.
That's great.
Yeah. And I ended up being fortunate enough to do a full type ride for my recurrent, an upgrade, and knock on wood, it went well. It was a piece of cake. It was great because I was totally primed for it after doing it for 10 months.
So you got issued the full type rating on your certificate.
So I have full type. Yep.
Nice. So let's
Which,
fast forward.
again, I'll mention flight safety because I'm under 1,000 hours, don't have another type. They have to sign off that they think I'm ready for that, right? And so if I piss them off, they might not do that, but they did do that, so I was able to get that.
Great.
That type upgrade.
Shout out to flight safety.
So at some point,
for sure.
Yeah. So at some point along this, and there are flight safety locations. This is not just Tucson, Arizona. We should mention this.
Right.
There are flight safety training facilities peppered all over the United States.
And the world.
And the world. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes. But, okay, so at some point, Josh, in this flight safety journey, you stumbled upon one of the clients coming in to do their recurrent or initial, and you were paired up with them, and which led you to sitting where you're sitting right now? Is that how it went?
So that's actually not how this job went. I did talk to an operator that was how it went. And I ended up at this job instead. This one.
Yeah, you went to Florida and were networking, right?
Yeah, I went to Florida and when I was networking.
Okay, that's right.
And I had.
It just seems like yesterday we were having the initial flight safety conversation. Like, yes, go in there and talk to them. It seems like it just happened.
Well, this has all been like 10 months.
Yeah, honestly, 10 months went by really fast. Because there wasn't a lot of sleep and I worked a lot. But
then didn't I introduce you to a mechanic that also
you
knew a
introduced
guy?
me to a mechanic. That's right.
In Fort
you
Lauderdale.
Introduced me to a mechanic out of Fort Lauderdale who knows the director of maintenance at MyOp now and said, hey, these guys are flying 60s. You should go over and talk to them. So I went over there that trip, and I had made a trip almost specifically to go to Florida to network. I spent the full day with an operator and met some other people in the hangar up north, and those didn't pan out. But hey, it is what it is. I'm not afraid of kicking doors in and going and meeting people and networking. So I went down to this op, and I couldn't find a phone number. I couldn't figure out where they were. Knocked on the door. No one was there. I stuffed my resume in the door. Nothing came of it. So I was back down in Florida. I grew up down there. My folks are down there. So I was back down in Florida for the holidays. And we were bringing my kids to a kids museum down in Fort Lauderdale. And I said, hey, let's stop by FXE on the Fort Lauderdale Executive on the way there. So I printed some resumes. I knocked on the door, and it was locked. I knocked on the door, and someone comes to the door. Oh, great. So I start talking to these two guys, and I said, oh, so-and-so sent me over. Well, it turns out the two guys are the owner of the company and the director of maintenance that knows the guy that sent me over.
Wow.
And so they're like, come sit down. So we start chatting, and they say, we're going to hire you. Your timing's perfect for a number of reasons. We're going to hire you. Okay. So, I don't know, like we'll see how this plays out, right? So I get back in the car. I think I might have just got a job. So, anyways, it takes a couple of months for everything to line up, but they were great to talk with, super professional and organized. And right around the same time, some of the networking, like you were talking about, Sean, with one of the other operators, panned out, and I got an offer from those guys as well. And that one didn't end up working out, but this one did. And so here I am.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah, down in Punta Cana flying the 60.
Oh man, so I got to ask, is it fun? Are you having fun?
Oh, it's a blast. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong. We pay our dues sometimes, flying into Teterboro in terrible weather or whatever. But,
sure.
Well, Josh,
these Caribbean trips certainly make up for it.
Well, Josh, your old boss, you said he's left the door open at that engineering job. So do you think you'll be going back there?
Not unless I get fired.
uh,
So, Josh, this
uh,
operator you're flying, so give us the details. So, this is a Lear 60. Is it 135, Part
it's
91?
it's a 135 operation. I'm flying the Lear 60. We have a couple of other planes as well. We have a handful of 60s.
And how much total time did you have when you were hired?
I was over 600. I think I was 630 of
great.
loggable time
Okay.
plus 200 hours in the sim.
Gotcha. Well, I
A
think
little
that's
over
a
200 in
critical
the
piece
sim.
of information.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
600 some hours, 700 hours total time. But the flight instructor, the guy who only knows putting around in the single
Yeah.
engine
Yeah.
Cessna, whatever, with 600 hours, he's not going to be able to pull this job
Not a
off.
chance.
It's
Not a chance.
no chance. That's right.
No chance.
The only reason you're where you're at is because of this flight safety hack. And I
Yep.
just, such a critical
Yeah, Sean.
thing in your career to do. You've jumped past so much bullshit. I
Yeah.
Yep.
mean,
Yeah. One other thing, Sean, I wanted to bring up when you were mentioning, all the locations of flight safety. There's more than one simulator operator for jets where you can do this exact
sure.
same.
Yeah. We shouldn't
A
just say
very,
flight safety. Yeah.
yeah. So CAE is a enormous
Yep.
training company. Also, they do the exact same thing. They're almost identical. They're
Yep.
headquartered in Dallas, but they have sims all over the country and some different places in the world. If you're in those areas, you may want to look on these operators' websites and see where they have training locations. There's
Right.
another one, Simcom in Orlando, pretty
Yep.
big operation.
Just
There's
gonna mention them. Yep.
yeah. So lots of different things, and there's two components here that I see. One is, well, there's several that you did correctly that we all preach. The accelerated training, not and then you took the leap and bought your own airplane. That's really cool. Obviously the simulator hack that we talked about, but also the networking in the you networked with us, then we introduced you to other people. You were able to beat the doors down, and this is kind of funny. I want to bring this up because this just happened in the last week. So another guy in our coaching, Brandon, who our viewers know because he's been
Oh
in
yeah.
several of our videos, So we're coaching him, and we're like, look, you got to get out the airport, and he's studying for his written. And, we're like, hey, one of the things I love to say is if you sit in the barber shop long enough, you'll end up with a haircut.
Right.
So I'm like,
he's
hey,
sitting at the airport studying his commercial written. I
yeah,
think,
and
right now.
FXC, and then he sends us this picture. He texts us this, and it's there you are. He's like, I think it's Josh getting off a Lear 60. I'm gonna go up to him.
That's what I
Yeah.
said. Aviation is a small world.
It's
Yep.
funny, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But he's doing great. I mean, he's met lots of corporate pilots, exchanged a lot of numbers and stuff, and he's going to be studying anyway, so he's down there. So
Yep.
I guess, I mean, you've given just by telling your story, you're giving people tons of advice. But I think one of our core viewers would be, this will resonate with somebody that maybe is in a decent job like you were, but they're still dreaming of being a pilot, and they're wondering whether they should make the leap. And they're probably, people have I think they call it negativity bias. So they're watching this and they're like, well, this guy, he's probably super smart. I mean, he was an optical engineer and maybe he had some money, bought his own plane and all this stuff. And this
Right.
wouldn't work for me. And he happened to live in Tucson and, this and that. So I'm sure, I'm just trying to say what the viewers are processing.
Yeah, sure.
What advice would you give to these folks that are watching this? I mean, you're a normal guy just like everyone else, and what encouragement could you give them, you think?
Yeah, well, so in terms of the buying the plane and whatnot, you can finance a plane like you can finance anything. I financed it for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
My airplane payment was lower than a lot of people's car payment.
Right.
We made decisions where we drive old cars. I have two older diesel Volkswagens that I don't have a car payment for, right? We sort of started making and lining up things when I was still making decent money in order to change our lives in a way that we could make it happen,
Yeah.
So there's always a way,
Yep.
for the guys out there that don't have any income or whatever, there's loans out there.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I didn't have to do that. But there is a way, and I've always been the type that I just force it. Like I'm gonna just keep trying and figuring out. And like I said, I didn't know this whole time. How am I gonna do this transition and still make a living, right? Because flight instructing on its own at a school is not a good living, right? That's for 21-year-olds, I
Right.
think, that don't have
Right.
expenses
Right.
and
Right.
families and whatnot. And
So
I
was that
knew that
was
wasn't.
was the
Go ahead.
most stressful day that day that you quit your engineering job? Do you think?
Uh, no. I was a big relief, honestly. It was a big relief. And I knew this job was lined up, and I knew I could always go back to engineering if things
Right.
got really bad. But we were set up for it. We were ready for it. Uh, the most stressful part of all of it was really towards the end before I had a job, and I was working essentially 4 jobs and still doing the family at home. That was hard. I was starting to burn
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was good that it made that things came together when they did, because I was starting to talk to my wife like I can't do this forever. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So
Very good.
yeah, just
Mike, when
hang
you
in
were
there and
saying
keep chipping
people,
away.
Mike, what you're saying, like people comparing themselves to Josh, and well, this guy, of course, he's an engineer. He had money. I can't do this shit. I don't have anything. I always remind, one of my favorite quotes is, you don't never ever compare yourself to other people. You don't have to worry
Right.
about what somebody else is
Right.
doing or how they did it. All you got to worry about is being better than yourself yesterday. And I mean, if you can do that every day, you're going to get better. And just like Josh was saying with driving the older cars, it's such a mistake of most people. Once they start getting a little dough in their pocket, oh, along comes the fancier car, some nicer clothes. Oh, I've had my eye on that watch, whatever. You gotta get that out of your head. If you want to, like a Dave Ramsey quote here, if you want to someday live like no one else, you need to live like no one else right now.
That's
That's
good. I like
another
that.
good one. When I
Yeah.
was thinking of one when you were talking, Josh, about financing the airplane. When I was in my 20s, I go over to this guy's house I'm working with, and he kind of makes the same amount of money as me. So I thought, and I go over. He's got this. I never been to his house before. He's got this big pole barn. I go in the back. He's got this sick boat out there, and a 4-wheeler, and all this, and a motorcycle. I'm like, dude, how do you afford all this stuff?
Dead
And
to
he's
his
like,
eyeballs.
he goes, I got a bad case of good credit. But you're right, man. So
Yeah.
you put that to work for good, not evil, and overall it worked out real good for you. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and
Well, what
I took a loan on the plane. I guess it's kind of similar to people taking a loan for
college?
flight training, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Right, or college, and it's just that it was an asset that had some equity in it that I could unload and not get stuck with the whole bill. So
Right. Yeah, you're right. You can finance these aircraft out 20. I've even seen 30-year aircraft loans.
sure,
I mean, like a damn
sure,
house mortgage. But
yeah,
one of the other reasons, now that we're back on the subject of it's probably a loser for, you take, somebody out in the middle of Oklahoma, their hangar cost compared to like somebody in New York, that hangar in New York is going to cost twice as much as your damn aircraft payment.
yeah,
right.
yeah. That's
So
true.
right away, you're going down the wrong path. And although it worked out for you,
Yep,
Yeah,
and
yep, very, yep. Awesome, man. Well, this was incredible. And, one of the things we love about this podcast is getting to meet people like you. And in the coaching, we really get to meet people. We've met a lot of people in person that are on there. And, we've become friends with a lot of you. And I can't wait to see where this goes. I don't think you don't want to say this publicly on a podcast. I'm sure this isn't a 10-month job like flight safety. But in a few years, it'll be interesting. We'll see what you're flying and what you're doing and where you're
yeah.
going.
We'll
So,
check in.
yeah, we'd love to have you back on. But in the meantime, we don't want to keep you from the pool bar any longer. I know it's peak sun right now. It's 2:26 p.m.
No,
You're,
if anybody asks, it's terrible and raining.
that's
yeah,
right.
right.
Hey, that's a
right.
hack that I told you.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
But
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
any of you out there watching, thank you again for joining us. If you want to see some success in your career like Josh has here, you can check our stuff out at ProPilotPlaybook.com. Go on the App Store, download the ProPilot Playbook app. If you want to shoot us a question, you can email us at podcast@ProPilotPlaybook.com. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.